So guys, I'm finally doing it. The updated definitive edition guide to Majin Buu restands. I'm going to split this video up into 3 parts. The first part is going to tell you what restands are. The second part is going to teach you how to do them. And the third part is going to explain their practical use in real matches. So let's get right into it. First, let me give you a brief explanation as to what exactly a restand is. So in simple terms, when you go into a combo in this game and many others, you get launched off the ground. And typically, you don't return to a standing state like this until you tech. Or in other words, when the combo ends. The strength of using restand, as opposed to a combo with a knockdown, is twofold. First, you don't have to deal with variable tech options. So if you guys don't already know, right? When you tech, you have 4 different directions that are 4 different directions that you can tech. You can also delay your tech for up to 30 possible different frames. So when you only have one opportunity to get out of something, it's a lot easier to restrict your opponent's options than if they had many chances. Now normally, Majin Buu actually doesn't have a problem with this because as detailed in the pressure video, he has Fat Toss Oki, which covers all the tech options anyway. But mid-screen, this setup truly shines because it allows you to bypass this really annoying game of in-place tech or back tech when you're trying to do a mid-screen re-jump or a mid-screen safe jump. So when you're mid-screen, you can really mix up and mess with your opponent that's trying to safe jump you by going for an in-place tech, and then all of a sudden their button is going to whiff you. Meanwhile, if you look at the difference when I set the dummy to back tech, when I go for the exact same safe jump type of setup, now my JM will hit him. The second reason restands are so potent is because potentially, especially when you compare it to a lot of other characters' level 3s, you actually get a better mix-up for less resources than a level 3. And that is pretty huge. A lot of team comps allow Fat Buu to get 3-way mix off of a restand. Most level 3s don't even really give most characters a 50-50. So this is one of the best ways to get people to use their spark up early. If you're going for a constant string of 50-50s on somebody and they really don't want to block that, you can get them to use their spark. So obviously this all sounds really strong, but there's always a catch to these type of things in Dragon Ball, and the catch to this is basically that you can mess the setup up very easy. On paper, you're safe to DPs and mashes and airs DPs and catches jumps and everything is all fruity and tight and dandy and the vortex is unbeatable, but all of these things are prone to human error. There are many components to each fat toss setup and only 3 frames of leniency not to fuck any of the inputs up. So generally, players can get discouraged from using the setups entirely out of fear for their opponent's mashing, which is the exact opposite of why you would play a character whose greatest strength is eliminating defensive options. This doesn't mean that restands suck or that they don't work, but it should be emphasized that there's an execution barrier, and that may discourage a lot of people, and also might encourage them to play an easier character like Nappa, for example, whose restands are generally very consistent as long as you do the right combo. So with all that prefacing out of the way, how do you actually do a restand mix? There are many different setups because there are many different assists and different scenarios that you could use, but I'm going to display 4 of the most iconic or common ways that people would get a restand mix right now. There are many ways to check if your assist has the leaves standing property by literally calling the assist on a grounded opponent and seeing if it launches. So for example, Bardock and the first couple hits of Janemba do not launch. However, Majin 21's ball and Android 17's power, whatever that thing is, they both launch. There's also just going to be a list of all the assists that don't launch in the description, just to save time. You're welcome. You also don't necessarily need an assist that doesn't launch in order to get this pressure, like I showed off. Buu A and 17A are both considered great reset tools, even though they don't actually restand, and that's because in situations of necessity, Buu can use his own normals to make the opponent stand out of fat, like you saw in the video. To lab these setups for yourself, first set the dummy to guard follow-ups, and this basically makes it so that if something is a reset, the dummy will block it. Then you set the dummy to counterattack vanish, and vanish is important because it's frame 4. Frame 4 things in this game are like the fastest reversal options that aren't true DPs. Everyone has a vanish. It's the easiest way to check if your setup is good. If it beats vanish, it'll also beat jump. It'll also beat not DP reversal moves such as Base Ku's shoulder or UI Goku's little flip back I-beam. And another reason I like to lab with vanish instead of just jump, for example, is vanish, just for some reason, there's something very different about vanish than other options that really gets it into your mind, the little sound effect and everything, it really gets it into your mind that your setup's not tight. It's just a mental thing that I think is pretty useful. The second thing to lab against is DPs, specifically frame 1 air DPs and EX DPs. EX DPs are fast, and usually their hitboxes hit pretty high, so if you can't safe jump one of these, you also can't safe jump a level 3, and your matchup is going to be very annoying against these characters if you can't do that. The frame 1 anti-airs, such as Labcoat's EX Backspin or Yamcha's EX Gale Claw or this Gogeta Blue LDP, are really only a bother against setups that have airborne assists. So for example, Gotenks B can get 2H'd and by extension it'll lose to this. You can potentially go for your 50-50 and then just get hit by the air DP, which is no fun. And all those air DPs that I mentioned also hit both sides, so you can't exactly cross them up consistently either. Unfortunately, some characters have counters, and counters are pretty good defensive options against restands, mostly because, like in Cooler's case, for example, if an assist or a normal hits it, you're still going to get countered. Jiren's EX counter, for example, if an assist hits it, you can get away with it. Janemba's 2-2-S, it'll work if an assist hits it, but it won't work if a physical hit hits it, so it really depends on the character. But Cooler is a good example because it doesn't matter what hits his counter, he's going to counter something. And that basically just means that no matter what, your safe jump and your setup means nothing, and that's just a matchup you have to hold. Fret not, however. The final defensive option to lab against is Reflect. And the easiest way to do this is actually to lab it against yourself. So you would literally just record your training dummy to do your setup. In the face of pure high-low 50-50s, all you can really do is just anti-reflect, like 2L5H or 2L5S into something, and then or you could just bait it and punish it. But if your setup allows a 3-way mix, like most of the setups, if not all the setups in the video I showed, then what you can potentially do is cross up their reflect, and what will happen is instead of pressing back S because you're on the other side, they'll press forward S, and they won't get a reflect. They'll get a key blast, and you could just essentially hit them out of the key blast. And I know it's not showing right now because it's Cooler, he's very tall, but point still stands. This is something that will happen very often, and it doesn't just apply to reflect. A lot of counters are motion inputs. If Cooler goes for his counter, but you cross him up, and instead he goes for his level 1, your safe jump now does mean something. Your assist can hit him, and now it will mean something, because he's not getting his counter anymore. It's kind of a pain to set this up in the lab because the only way this actually happens is if you do everything frame perfectly. Because Reflect will come out on the first frame that people input it. That basically means if you're off by a single frame, then your cross-up can still get reflected and their input can still go through. But it's pretty useful to know because that also applies to them. That implies that they're going for this, they're going for their reflect or they're going for their counter on the first possible frame. If they're mashing, it might not come out on the first possible frame, especially if it's a motion input like a counter. So it's still a good thing to lab with because in a given game, most of the time both players are not going to be doing anything frame perfectly. So having something to try and help you without having to think about it is a lot better than having to consciously bait it. The last thing to keep in mind when labbing is to actually do a full combo first before you test your setup's tightness. You can just raw 236H if you're trying to develop a concept, because it's not like a new idea that needs to be tightened and refined immediately. But to ensure that your setups will work even after a lot of hit stun decay, there's no way to just add hit stun decay to your combos in the training settings. So what you'll need to do is just do a combo to get the max hit stun decay and then see if the setup is still tight. To save you a bit of time, as you've seen me do in this video a lot, all of my combos, for the most part, have started with Dragon Rush, and Dragon Rush adds a lot of hit stun decay. So if you don't want to bother doing an actual full combo, you can just do a Dragon Rush combo. Your setups don't need to be 50-50s, and this is the key difference between Majin Buu and Nappa as characters. Most, if not all of Nappa's setups, the entire point of the setup is to make them 50-50. However, the caveat is that they're tighter. That's why that's the key goal with Nappa players. But Majin Buu, on the other hand, whose setups are more freeform rather than just tight vortexes, you don't really have to go for 50-50s all the time. You can use a 50-50 as a means of conditioning people into guessing, and then when they least expect it, you go for something like a reactable cross-up or a Dragon Rush once you land, or something of that kind of vein. If you have the ability and the execution to put someone in a constant 50-50 vortex, that's pretty strong, and I really do love that for you. But if you're a mid-level or even most of the time high-level player who doesn't need that much more than good staggers and a good 6M placement to open up your opponent, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you're seriously considering this character for tournaments, please don't just do some bullshit like this out of fat, because you can be doing so much broken stuff out of fat. But if you're really good at the conditioning game, which I really suggest you start to grind at and get good at if you're playing this character, a lot of the time, because of stuff like reflect basically beating some setups and counters basically beating some setups, if you just have an innate sense when to bait people and what to do against people's defensive options, then I really do suggest that you don't play this character like Nappa, because if you play him like Nappa, it's a guess for you as much as it is for them, because they can just guess your option. But if you set up something that makes them want to guess while you're in all the control to move however and wherever you want, I really do want to emphasize that reactable mix off of fat is a lot better than it probably sounds on paper. So that's a pretty good segue into how do you do restands in a real match? When do you use them is the better way to put it. How do you apply this knowledge to your real gameplay? And like I was just saying, the key is mental stack. So a big thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about things to lab against when you were going for restands is Spark. And the big reason why is because, you know, Spark is very hard to lab against. Most characters don't have a reliable option against Spark, and Majin Buu's no different, right? You can kind of go for a setup and back away and try and bait it and get a hit like that, but most of the time, you're just not going to be able to predict it because you don't know your opponent, at least if you haven't played them before, right? This is all, you know, this is all assuming that this is just some random in bracket that you never met before. And Majin Buu, I mean, yeah, you can kind of just go for the standard stuff of, like, you go for your setup, and then you do a super or something, and you try and, like, use the invincibility of the super to bait the Spark, and then you get a hit, and something like that. But most of the time, you either have to just raw call it out, or you just have to accept that you're going to get hit by it. but this can actually be a point in your favor. So let's just say, for example, that your opponent has a point character that your entire team struggles against. Let's say that point character is Red Gogeta, SSJ4, right? Now, SSJ4 has a DP, and the DP is a 2-2 input, which basically means it doesn't care about what side Buu's going to be on. But because it's just a regular speed DP, it's pretty slow. Most of the time, you can safe jump it, kind of avoid it, something like that. Its hitbox isn't huge either. So he might want to Spark to get out of the mix and save his point character so he can use it in a better matchup later. But by caveat, what that would do is he would be using his Spark and then using a meter, because most people go for that classic Spark into empty vanish type of thing. He'd be using his Spark and a meter to kill a character that, compared to, let's say, the rest of your team too, is also top tiers. This is just a very competitive kind of analysis, right? Let's say the rest of your team is 2 top tiers. He used his Spark, a meter, and probably an assist before he got a hit in order to kill a character that has, compared to other top tiers, I want to stress that, worse neutral, worse damage, worse matchups, worse offense, worse block strings, worse hitbox because he's very big, a bad matchup against your point character. You see where I'm going with this, basically? He used his Spark on a character that was, let's say, for the sake of competition, was not the best one on your team. Even if you're crafting a Majin Buu team and the whole point of the team is Majin Buu, let's say the best character on your team is like Janemba or something, right? He spent his Spark to kill a character that wasn't the character that beats his team. That's kind of the strength of this kind of thing. So you can use it to get people to Spark on purpose. Another optimal time to restand is, let's say you have 3 to 4 meters, right? This is very common if you play mid Majin Buu. And when you have this much bar, the damage in the game is so high now that if you get a hit, no matter what the hit is, it could be an assist starter, it could be a really stupid setup. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, you're going to 2-touch people. And once you have metered or 2-touch, all of a sudden 50-50s are a lot more threatening. And all of a sudden, even reactable mix and just restand in general becomes a lot more threatening. So that's a very good time to go for a restand. And another great time to go for a restand is just basically when you're mid-screen, like I said in the video. Because most of the time, mid-screen sliding knockdown Oki sucks ass. And Majin Buu, a lot of his combos don't really actually get a knockdown anyway. So a big majority of the time, what's going to happen is you're going to go for a re-jump, and you're not going to make it all the way to the corner, and you're just going to be like, F it. He's already in 236H. That's my only knockdown. I might as well try and restand him right here. What I don't suggest doing is if you just get a random neutral hit, all your assists are gone, and you have no friggin' meter, is you go for a restand. Because in that situation, Spark is the last thing you want them to do to you. Alright? If they Spark, they can win neutral because you don't have any assists up to help you, and you don't have any meter for Majin Buu to get his best movement option. Even if you do have the half a bar, if it doesn't work out, and you don't even have enough meter to, like, fake vanish after or something for them to just reflect you away, you basically have no panic option. And panicking isn't really good in competitive play, but not having any panic options, just reliable things to get people off of you or away from you, that's really going to hurt you. It's really not going to be good for you. So the last thing you want is to give them a very choreographed opportunity to Spark. In fact, it's almost better that you go for a shitty JH knockdown or a sliding knockdown, because you can set up a fat toss and at least you'll be resetting to neutral and your assists will be regenning again. And even if they Spark, they're not going to be right in front of you. You might be able to get something off of that. The last time I think is important to remember to go for restands is if you get a neutral hit, right? So this is a pretty common neutral hit for Majin Buu. It's one of his best neutral options. It's just a really good movement tool, right? You can make mix-ups like that. It gets people to do stuff that they normally wouldn't do because they want to chase you, and they can't really react to that consistently in that type of situation. Like, this is a pretty fucking incredible situation to deal with. But a key thing that people forget about this move is that Majin Buu can kind of go for solo pressure off of it anyway. So, for example, the setup I was just trying to go for right there is a solo tick throw. You can do it, you just kind of like wait so the hit stun timer ticks down, and then you go for this type of thing. It's a little bit tricky because you have to delay the auto combo as much as humanly possible. And sometimes you can delay the other buttons and then get confused and be like, oh shit, that was the wrong thing that I had to delay. And as you can see, I still haven't gotten it yet. But it's a very, very good solo setup. Baby players love to go for stuff like solo tick throw setups, and it works for them all the time. So yeah, there we go. That would be the tick throw. And Majin Buu also, unlike Baby, has a lot different pressure after that, right? So like, if Baby ends his string, and Majin Buu also has similar pressure to Baby after that, right? So Baby has a cross-up L that's 6 frames, and Majin Buu has a cross-up EX cartwheel that's 6 frames. Baby has a same side J2H that is 12 frames or something like that, and Majin Buu has a same side medium cartwheel. A little bit tricky. You gotta space it just a tiny bit, but you know, he can kind of go for a same side medium cartwheel that's also 12 frames. So the key, and another thing that you can do honestly is just go for a combo. And this is pretty useful because if people see you do this and they think you're going for the combo, then they won't expect the tick throw, right? So you can actually do a combo with this first and get it into their head that you were just like doing a combo or something. And then when they don't expect you to go for it, what'll happen basically is you'll just get it. They won't expect you to go for the tick throw. They're not going to jump. They're not going to do shit. So basically the only times that you would go for solo Majin Buu pressure is after short combos. So stuff like that. You see, he's still plus in that scenario. People can't jump out of this. So even though you're not getting a 50-50, what you are getting is decent pressure. So you can go for like plus frame into Dragon Rush, for example. You can go for plus frame into cross-up EX cartwheel, which is pretty strong. That's a 6 frame, tied with Teen Gohan for fastest cross-up in the game, by the way. And honestly, you can even just backdash and see if they reflect and reset to neutral, if anything. And even if they want to jump, you can play that little backdash reset mind game, which if you don't know what that looks like, something like that. So when you do like a really short combo, you don't have any assist to extend, you don't have special tag to go into, you can kind of go for a solo pressure. But again, you shouldn't really do this if you don't have that much bar, because if they spark, you kind of messed up in neutral. As a reiteration of everything in this video, restands are good because they offer you very, very strong mix-ups. These mix-ups don't have to be 50-50s. They're just incredible pressure that sometimes also gives you incredible 50-50s. It's not like Nappa. It's a little bit different. To execute restands, you have to use Fat Toss, break them out of Fat, and use an assist to keep your plus frames in some way, shape, or form. I already went over how to lab the stuff. And you should apply restands in scenarios where doing so, the benefit outweighs the risk. That is the main thing to keep in mind. Aside from that, guys, there is nothing more I have to teach you. You are now a restand expert. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. And if you liked my channel, promote this to any of your friends that want to learn Majin Buu, or just anybody. I'm desperate. Please help me. And yeah, I'll see you in a new video. See you guys.